Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. This week, we're celebrating the museum's 20th anniversary of being in operation. And all week, we're talking about some more museum-y topics. Today's video, so you've gotten a museum ship. What the heck do you do now? On Monday, we released a video about Kitty Hawk and Kennedy, why some ships aren't saved as museums. This video, we're looking at the opposite. A ship has been saved as a museum. What should your first step be? Or what do you have to do now? So there's no right order to go through this. We're just going to talk about a couple of the things that you've got to get in line right out the door from day one. So first off, you got to make the ship look good. If the ship doesn't look good, people aren't going to donate to it because they don't think it's going to last as a museum. So you've got to figure out a plan for making the exterior topside part of the ship look good. That is going to require volunteer labor, so you've got to reach out and get volunteers. Now, there are a ton of veterans organizations, and they all have publications, and there's ways to reach out to folks like this. And as you are opening a new museum ship, there will be a tremendous amount of hype along with that. So it should be relatively easy to get word out in the news, on social media, and other places like that. Speaking of social media, any of your platforms are going to have communities already there dedicated to these types of vessels that will help you spread the word. Once your ship looks good from the outside, you've got to get a tour route going. You've got to start monetizing this thing as quick as possible. Some early museum ships were able to get state funding, and that was able to get them started. Most likely any museum ship that forms from here on out is not going to have that privilege. So you don't have to have your ship open to the public to start doing your mission. You can start an education program, focus on STEM education, and get that going right off the bat. And then you need a tour route, so a couple of spaces inside the ship, along with your topside spaces that people can go through. So your first tour route should probably be whatever the centerline passageway through the main deck of the ship is, and then you should branch out from there. The bridge, the captain's cabin, and then further down the line, gunnery spaces, engineering spaces. You should have a plan for this, like at least looking out 5 years. The first thing we want to do is this, and then we want to get into a berthing space, and then next year we're going to fundraise to do this, and keep going. And always keep opening new things so that you can keep fundraising, because people aren't going to give you money for the same old thing over and over again. We've been talking about the deck for 2 or 3 years now. We've gotten a tremendous amount of support for that, and we've been able to progress that project. But 4 or 5 years, the donors who are interested in that are dried up, or they've already given us something. So you need something new. So you formed a volunteer group, you formed an education program, you know where your tour route's going to be. There are some steps that need to come before that. The Navy has given you a ship, or they've told you can have the ship, but you now need to tow it from where it is to wherever it's going to go. And presumably, by the time the Navy has approved of your plan, or some foreign entity that's giving you this vessel, you've already worked with your hometown to get some sort of berth for it, a pier, a dry dock, a wharf, somewhere to park your boat and set up a ticket booth and a gift shop. So you've got to work with your local community and politicians and make them aware of what your museum is going to need. There has to be parking there, there has to be access, and make them aware of what your museum will bring to the local economy. So if you can't get the local politicians on board, you can't take a ship there. You should also be working with other museum ships that are already existing. One, they'll help you with ideas and paperwork and where to get started. And two, If there's already a museum ship in X place, the Kitty Hawk video, one of the comments that I kept seeing was they should have just saved John F. Kennedy and put her in Battleship Cove, or put her near Battleship Cove, where the Kennedy family is from. Well, have you worked with Battleship Cove? They've already got a large collection of vessels there. Do they want another thing that they have to do maintenance on? Probably not. Do they want something nearby that's going to take money away from them? With Battleship New Jersey, part of the reason we ended up in South Jersey instead of North Jersey is because the aircraft carrier Intrepid up in New York didn't want the competition nearby, but the cruisers, the Independent Seaport Museum, the Cruiser Olympia and the Submarine Bakuna, thought that having another ship nearby might draw more people in. So it was possible to work with one of those groups. Another group didn't want us. So there's things to consider there. There are a lot of existing museum ships right now all over the place. So you got to look at a heat map there and see where you can go that's going to give you enough visitation. So you've brought your ship in, you've got a place for it, you've tied it up. Simply tying it up isn't good enough. You need a 100-year storm plan. So you've got to chain it down somehow so that a major hurricane coming through doesn't drag your ship away, throw it into a wharf, damage it, damage other people's property. You've got to figure out plumbing. Ships have overboard discharge, but you're going to have to run that into the local plumbing system somehow. Electricity, you've got to get power from the local grid to your ship, because you're not running your steam plant anymore to generate power, or whatever propulsion system your ship had. And you got to work out how you're going to pay for that. Same thing with both potable water and the fire main. So some museum ships choose not to run water to their vessels. Other ones, like Battleship New Jersey, do. Running water to your vessel brings all sorts of preservation issues, because you've got 80-year-old plumbing it's running through that's going to leak all over your tour route. But not running water to your ship, well, where are your visitors going to go to the bathroom? Do you have some sort of visitor center set up for them? It's another thing to consider. And then you got to pay for this. Get a water meter in. Work with the water company. Likewise, a fire main, you've got to get some sort of fire suppression to your ship. Whatever your local ordinances are, you got to figure that out. And then it's going to be different for different museum ships depending on where they are. And they'll have requirements of X amount of fire suppression in case of any issues like that. So you've got a ton of stuff there to look at getting ready before you can even get started. In Battleship New Jersey's case, we had to build our own pier and dredge out our own berth. Another thing you need to figure out is cathodic protection. You are a steward of this vessel on behalf of the public, and it is your requirement to maintain this vessel as long as possible. One of the ways to preserve a vessel long-term in water is with cathodic protection. So you can use a passive system, make sure the zincs are renewed, but better than that is an active system, an impressed current cathodic protection system that's going to put a slight electrical charge into the water around your ship to keep dissimilar metal corrosion from happening. And it'll help preserve your ship long term. It's a huge return on investment there. So tons of things that you have to consider here. If you're getting a ship out of mothballs, odds are tanks have been inspected relatively recently, sea chests have been blanked over, but it's not guaranteed. And if you're getting a vessel from a foreign country, like Slater came from Greece, other ships have come from foreign places, they might come straight from active service, sail over here, and then you've got this vessel. You've got to get it in dry dock, inspect the hull, and blank over any and all through hull openings. And then you got to inspect your tanks. Some of them will still have fuel in them. If you have the ability to pay to get them cleaned out now, it'll save you a ton of trouble in the long run. Because anytime you do hot work on the hull, which you're going to have to do, there will be preservation issues that come up and you're going to have to weld on the hull. You can't weld on a fuel tank that still has residual fuel in it, so you got to get them cleaned out. That's one of those things that I thank God every single day that Battleship New Jersey was able to take care of day one, pier side at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, is getting all the tanks cleaned out. So it means that whenever we have to do hot work on the hull, we're going to have a way easier time of it. At this step, you also have to decide, are you going to seal up all of your tanks? If there's no oxygen in there, they're not going to corrode as quickly. Or are you going to open up all your tanks and ventilate them, which is going to allow you to go in and inspect them more often? This should come down to, do you have the staff or volunteers to go in and inspect? At some point during this process, you should be mapping out what your staff should look like. It's going to vary from ship to ship, and the size of your ship is going to matter. There are some excellent museum ships out there that are run by mostly volunteer staff. There are some excellent museums out there that have a 2 or 3 man staff. If you've got something the size of a battleship, 20 to 25 full-time people seems to be where most of us are at. I mean, obviously, if you land something like Intrepid in New York City, Missouri in Honolulu, or Midway in San Diego, you'll need a bigger staff. But most of the rest of us have about 20 to 25 full-time staff. And what sort of positions are you doing there? You need a curatorial staff. That might just be one person. They may double with other things. I certainly do. Curatorial is a sunk cost. You have to do it, and there will be no return on investment for it, but it's something you have to do if you're a museum. People are going to donate you artifacts. You need somebody there to take care of it. It's going to cost money to do this, and you don't make money back from it. You need an education staff. Maybe that falls under curatorial. Maybe that falls somewhere else. People are going to want tours of the ship. You can make way more money giving guided tours of the ship than you can just letting people through. Not all museum ships do guided tours or school group tours or things like that. And that absolutely boggles the mind. It's money that's just sitting on the table that somebody isn't picking up. You need a development person, speaking of money, somebody who can reach out to people and cultivate a donor base. Obviously, you need a chief executive officer of some sort, an executive director. At a smaller museum, they might double and also be the ship superintendent and maintenance guy. Or at a larger museum, they may be like exclusively outward-facing, doing fundraising work, and they'll have like an operations person below them who's doing the day-to-day stuff. It really depends on what kind of ship did you get. You're going to need front-of-house staff. So you need somebody who's doing the retailing and ticketing. You got to have a gift shop. People expect it. It's going to make you money. You've got to sell people tickets. If they're coming on board, you got to sell them tickets. That's a no-brainer. These guys are some of the most important staff you have because they deal with the public day in and day out, and they need to know, hey, we're going to collect email addresses from the public so we can build up a base so we can put out communications to everybody. That's going to help our development guy or our marketing guy. They need to know what information they're collecting and what information they're giving to guests so that they know what to see when they're on the tour route. You need somebody doing bookkeeping, accounting. Like your museum is going to be bringing in money. They're going to be accounting for loans. They're going to be spending money, paying contractors. You've got to have somebody who knows what they're doing managing that. Small nonprofit type museums have had massive success with their chief executive officer just using a simple program like QuickBooks. Larger museums have dedicated accountants or accounting departments. So you got to figure out where you lie. So this has been in no way an intensive list, but it is many of the things that you need to be thinking about as you are planning to take over a new museum ship. My highest aspiration in life is to start out with my own museum ship. If anybody ever is on a board that gets a new museum ship, I'm your guy. I would love to start as the executive director of a brand new museum ship where I don't have to deal with any of the problems of people in the past. I know I'm going to make my own problems, no matter how experienced I am at that point, but it's then on the guys down the road that have to deal with that. I cannot overstate how important it is to join organizations like the Historic Naval Ships Association or the Council of American Maritime Museums or other maritime-related organizations if you get a ship, or there will be similar organizations for if you're starting a different type of museum. The knowledge base there is decades of experience per person. Like, it's so much better than a group of guys sitting around a table thinking about, hey, we want to get a museum ship. Well, let's just do it and see what happens. And call somebody from one of these organizations, get in touch with other folks, and figure out what is possible, what has been done in the past. That's one of those things that pays for itself. There isn't a week that goes by that I don't contact a couple of my colleagues in HINSA to figure out. I've been doing this job for 15 years between the battleship and other museum ships, but to figure out what to do with X artifact or this problem that just cropped up or this maintenance need. What have other people done for their teak wood decks? We contacted all the wood deck ships to see what had been tried in the past. So absolutely talking to other people. In particular for this video, I'd like to thank Tim Rizzuto, who's the executive director of Slater, who came up with a list in a 15-page document that he's provided to new museum ships that are forming. And he's one of those guys that I call pretty frequently for advice. I don't want to leave out anyone else, but everybody else in HINSA who might be watching this, you know who you are and how often I call you. And I'm sorry you don't have time to work on your own ship because you're helping me with mine. So, which of these various steps do you think is most important? How would you prioritize them? I've seen what other ships have done, but I've never started my own, so I don't fully have the list of prioritizations in mind. I certainly wouldn't prioritize them the way I've spoken about them off the top of my head in this video. I sort of went by what I'm most responsible for, down to what I know nothing about, accounting. So you, with your experiences, might rank it differently, and I'd be interested to see what you say. As far as I know, there are currently no ships on donation hold right now through the Navy, but there are a couple of groups out there that are looking to acquire museum ships. So if you know about any of them, also let us know in the comment section down below. Maybe we can put them in touch with other folks with similar organizations. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State and from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support you've given us. It allows us to keep doing what we're doing, and there's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and the mission of the museum. Thanks for watching.